Today we're gonna make the best double chocolate biscotti. It is actually a surprisingly easy recipe, and you get the perfect, deep, rich, chocolatey biscotti that have that beautiful crunch every single time. There's like a nice little dusting of turbinado sugar on the top for extra crunch and a little extra sweetness. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to hit the subscribe button below and click the bell icon to be notified every time I post a new and delicious recipe. Let's get into it. So this is the cutting method. Super easy to make, super easy to pull together. So all we're gonna do is put most of our ingredients into this bowl. So I've got my AP flour, I've got my sugar, cocoa powder, whoop, bam, baking powder, kosher salt, boom. We're gonna go ahead and get that in our stand mixer. I'm gonna give it one twirl about to incorporate, to kind of mix those together before I add the butter. It's not totally necessary, I just like to, kind of give that a little mix, voila. And then we're gonna put our butter in. Now this is just like the stone recipes where you cut in the butter completely. You wanna make sure there's no visible butter bits anywhere. So it's gonna take, let's call it a good 10 minutes. Depending on how good of a day your stand mixer is having. We shall see. Meanwhile, I am going to whisk together my wet ingredients, much like the scones as well. Interesting. That's milk. I've got an egg here, and vanilla. Now I'm going to go ahead and give that a nice little whisk, just to get them incorporated, because we're going to add them to our dry ingredients once the butter is completely cut in, and you don't want to activate the gluten any more than you have to, but you do want them to mix in completely. So the best way to do that is just to go ahead and preempt it and whisk together all of your wet ingredients so that you have one thing to incorporate. Done. Yeah, I know. Go ahead and check in on this, see what it's doing. It's just cutting away. Nothing exciting is happening here. I do see some visible butter bits, and so we are just gonna keep on mixing. So we can prepare a pan. You know me, gotta keep doing. Get yourself a baking sheet. It's gonna make 2 logs, if you will, or we can do them this way. Haven't decided. Grab yourself a piece of parchment paper, give it a little spray, just so it doesn't fly about. Pop that down. All right, that's done. So towards the end, when it's like almost pretty much cut in, the butter will have worked into the flour, so that might start to clump and look like butter pieces. So the best way to see that if it's done is to kind of just get in there and pull up some pieces that look like they might be butter and see and just verify, Okay, it is done. So all of our butter has cut in completely. There's no visible butter remaining. It is nice and coated, the flour is evenly coated. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn that back on low, and then we're gonna pour our wet ingredients in while it is mixing. And you wanna get all in there, and then you wanna just let it mix just to combine. You could finish this by hand if you so chose. I choose not. So now we have a nice cohesive dough. There's a few bits in the bottom. We'll get those later. And then we're gonna add our chocolate. So this is 55% semi-sweet, like kind of pistoles that I've, roughly chopped. But you could use chocolate chips, a bar that you've chopped, whatever. Just get them in there. Give them a nice mix. Acknowledge that half of them are gonna be on the bottom, and you're gonna have to put them in by hand. And we don't care about that, because why? This is gonna be so delicious. All right, so we're gonna take this and put it out on our countertop. This is the point where you could totally finish it by hand if you wanted, or you could just, do what I did and just leave it in the mixer. So now we're gonna make 2 logs. Now at this moment, at this juncture, if you will, you're gonna decide how big, how fat you want your biscotti to be. Yeah, choices, you got choices. So So you see what we've got here. We've got a nice little dough. Isn't she pretty? And I retract my former statement. I think I'm just gonna do one large one here in the center. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this a nice little roll. And acknowledge that this is going to spread, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and give that a roll. And I'm thinking, I want like nice, decent sized biscotti. Yeah. Boom. And I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna place it on the tray. And then you know what we're gonna do? Chill. We're gonna go ahead and pop this in the fridge, give it a chill, and then we're gonna preheat our oven to 325 degrees. Yes, we are. Beep. All right, our biscotti is totally chilled. She's firm and lovely, and we are ready to bake her. Now you can bake her as she is. No harm, no foul. But I'm gonna brush her with a little bit of heavy cream, and you guessed it, turbinado sugar. I just love a good crunchy turbinado situation. And if there's any hope it'll stay on there, and I'll be happy later, then I'm gonna take it. All right, anyways, our oven is preheated to 325, and we are ready to bake her for the first time. So pop her in. It's gonna take like 20 minutes, possibly more, because she's pretty fat. We'll check back in. All right, our biscotti is out. It baked about 30 minutes. She was pretty fat and very cold. So you really just need to check, and when it's done, it's done. It just depends on the size that you make it and how long it's gonna take. But towards the end, you wanna make sure that it feels kind of like set when you touch it with your finger, right? So you don't want it to, you know, squish down or feel doughy, then it's definitely not done. And towards the end, you can check it with a cake tester if you like. You kind of just slide it in and then pull it out, and then you kind of have to play that game of, is it chocolate or is it batter? So you kind of look at it and see, like, if it looks shiny and, you know, like melted chocolate, then it's chocolate. And if you don't see any cake crumbs or whatever, then it is done. So we're just gonna let this cool completely. You can slice it when it's cool, the day it's made. You can do this whole process in one day, but I find that it slices a lot easier on the second day. So we're gonna let this cool completely, and then I'm gonna wrap it, and we will slice it and bake it again tomorrow. And we're back. So it is the next day, and we have let our biscotti cool overnight. It is just easier to slice the next day. You don't have to slice it the next day. You can totally slice it the day you bake it. There's really no, that's okay, as long as it's cool. Or you will have it's gonna break apart, it's gonna be a whole thing. So I'm just gonna pull that onto my cutting board here, and I've got my sheet pans, because we're gonna bake them again. So I have preheated my oven to 300 degrees, which is what's going to kind of like, they're gonna basically dry out a bit, and you're just gonna finish baking them until they're crisp. So ours is chubby, which means that we can slice it this way. If you had a thinner one and you wanted them, you could slice them on the angle, but if I slice mine on the angle, we're gonna have like really long biscotti. And I mean, that's a lot of dunking, just saying. So go ahead and slice them. You want to make sure that they're decently thin. It's about 1/4 of an inch. You don't want them to be too thick, or they will take too long to bake and the bottoms will burn before it's become crispy. If you don't let them cool completely, then it's going to be hard to cut them without the edges breaking, which is just something to know. You can take the parchment off. Obviously, it's not really serving a ton of purpose here, given that I am slicing it along with it, but it's fine. So now we have our beautifully sliced biscotti, and it's ready to be placed on its final resting place. No, its final resting place is in my belly, but it's ready to be placed on the parchment-lined baking sheets that we've so lovingly created. Now, they're obviously not going to spread because they're already baked, so you can go ahead and just kind of have them in a stack and then pop them down. They all need their own space though, so they can't be on top of each other or whatever. I know that, that probably sounds really obvious, but you know, they smell so good. They're like so richly cocoa-y. You can smell it like even now. All right, now we're ready to bake. I preheated my oven 300 like I told you, and we're gonna pop them in. We're gonna check them like every 5 minutes. And as it gets closer, I'm gonna check them every minute. You don't want to overbake them. You can overbake them and then they will be hard as rocks. You want that fine line where they're kind of crispy and dry, but not like dry. They will kind of dry out as they sit. So, you know, you can eat them in the day they're made, but you can also store these for a month if you store them properly. That was a really long-winded way to say put them in the oven. In the oven. Yay. So they're out. They baked about 10 minutes. I rotated them one time. You really want to look for these edges to be super set, like firm almost. And the centers will kind of have a bit of resistance when you touch them, and they will look completely matte. Obviously not to be confused with like the chocolate is going to melt obviously in the oven, so you want to look at the kind of the cookie part. And then you want to take them out and let them cool completely. So they're very hot, so we're gonna let them cool and then we will dive in. It's time to try. If I had some coffee at this moment, I would take a dip, but I don't. But they're amazing all on their own, just know that. So let's get in there. You know how crunchy that is? It's crunchy and perfectly chocolatey. It's like almost like velvety in a way, like coats your mouth and it's just like chocolate. Because there's a chocolate cocoa powder inside and then also the chocolate chips. And then that extra little bit of sugar and like crunch on the top from the turbinado. Heaven. Let's get into it. Triple chocolate biscotti. Okay, it's double chocolate, fine. Yeah, like a chocolate hug, obviously. Everyone knows what that means. I would like to eat all of these, but I won't.